And welcome everybody to this. We're not calling it a shiur, we're calling it a workshop. It makes it less scary. The point of this shiur is to, now that we're Baruch Hashem finishing the Sha'arei Kiddushin course, the idea is that the truth is the real hisayrus for this workshop was that last year when we finished the course, we had a lot of people who said, we loved it, we learned a lot. I loved it, I learned a lot, etc. I didn't feel like everything was, all the loose ends were tied up once everything was concluded. So that's the point of this event. So we're very excited to have Rabbi Moshe Kesselman, who is distantly related to me. And to have him, somebody, a Rav, who does a lot of weddings and who's obviously involved with a lot of Rabbanim who do weddings, who can definitely share with us, his insight and the procedure for being a Mesader Kiddushin. So on that note, Rabbi Moshe Kesselman, thank you for joining, and whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Good evening, Moirai v'Rabosai. It is a great honor to be here. We'll go through some of the practicalities involved in doing Chuppah v'Kiddushin. As was mentioned at this point, the understanding is that you are well versed in the background, in the Makoros, in the understanding of the halachas and where they come from. And this is just really the Makeh B'Patish, some practical suggestions of how to apply everything you've learned on a very practical basis. So let's go through it from the top. And then afterwards, with Hashem's help, we'll try to take some questions. So the process begins with a meeting. You'll be sitting in your office with a couple, a man and a woman, and they will tell you in no uncertain terms that they would like to they would like you to be their Mesader Kiddushin. They would like you to officiate at their wedding, and you're going to give them Chuppah v'Kiddushin. That's where it starts. Of course, from there, all the work begins. So at this point, what many shluchim do, it's actually a really good idea, is they give the couple a form to fill out with a whole bunch of questions. I actually recommend that you get a hold of these forms. That's not taken from any sefer particularly. It's just, shluchim kind of made it on their own. And it goes through it asks the necessary questions. If you don't have or don't want, for whatever reason, to use that form, you can ask the questions verbally, but I know a lot of shluchim use the form, and I highly recommend it. The form is going to do a couple of things. Number one, just get the basic information, right? Names, ages, etc.
The reason he needs to see the inside of the house is because he said it sounds like a knockdown.
Anything I said? No? All right. Then the form is going to collect all the necessary information that you're going to need for Birur Yadus. So the form will ask, where were your parents married? Who was the Rav who officiated your parents' wedding? Do your parents still have the ksubah? Again, collecting all the information that you would need to do Birur Yadus. If the couple are not frum, the couple will ask, the form will ask the couple for some, information that can trace any connection between this couple and their affiliation with Jewish institutions. Are you associated with a shul? Are you associated with a school? Are you associated with any rabbi? If yes, what's his phone number, etc. If they're frum, then obviously that's not as necessary, but still, you want to know where the couple is coming from and what they're all about. And the form will also ask for two friends of theirs that can vouch for their Jewish status. Again, I don't know that you'll be doing the formal Birur Yadus yourselves, but even if you won't be, even if you'll be giving it to Rabbi Ullman or one of the Rabbonim or Botei Dinim that do the Birur Yadus, you still have to and should collect all the information. The form will also ask the three big questions, A, C, D. Are there any adoptions in the family? Are there any conversions in the family? and are there any divorces in the family? Both on the chosn side and on the kala side, you need to collect this information. When we say, are there any adoptions on either side of the family, that means, is everybody, or are we all biological children here, or is someone adopted? If we're adopted, then of course it's going to raise issues with bir yadus. Where were they adopted from? If they were adopted from non-Jewish people, we got a question about Jewish identity. If they were adopted from Jewish people, we may have other questions, like the halachic status of these Jewish people, etc. We're going to ask if there are any conversions in the family, because of course, if there were conversions, we need to know that the conversions are kahalacha. We need to know who did the conversion, etc. I only want to add at this point that if there are conversions, or if there are conversions anywhere in the family, on the side of the chosn or on the side of the kala, it is not sufficient for them to merely say, oh, it was done by an Orthodox rabbi, even if they produce documents, that here it was done by an Orthodox rabbi. Unfortunately, not every rabbi that the couples think is Orthodox is really Orthodox, and not every rabbi who claims to be Orthodox is in fact Orthodox, and not every Orthodox rabbi's conversions are reliable and acceptable, etc. So you have to know if there are any conversions anywhere in the family, and then you have to know if there are any divorces in the family. Again, all of these questions are both for the tzad chosn and for the tzad kala. Was the chosn himself married before? Was the kala herself married before? Were any of their parents married before? If any of their parents were married before, if it's on the mother's side, we could run into issues of mamzerus. If it's on the father's side, and maybe one of the grandparents were married before, we could run into issues of mamzerus. All of this needs to be, again, all the information needs to be collected. You can either do this through a form, or you can actually ask these questions verbally. If you're going to ask these questions verbally, you have to make sure beforehand that you know all the right questions to ask. Also very important is to ask them if there are any kohanim. Levium, I think, is less important, at least at this stage of it. But very important to ask if there are any kohanim in the family. If there are kohanim in the family, then there are a whole bunch of additional issues that we need to be aware of, right? Just to give you some very quick examples that people are not necessarily aware of. A kohen, a man who's a kohen, may not marry a woman whose father is not Jewish, even though she's 100% Jewish, and even though she's never been married before. She's not a grusha, and she's not a gioris, and she's not a halolo, she's not a zoina, she's never had a non-Jewish boyfriend, etc. A kohen may not marry a woman whose father is not Jewish. A kohen may not marry a woman who's had a non-Jewish boyfriend. If the guy is a kohen, you have many, many additional issues. In addition to which, I had this not long ago, just again, something that people are not always aware of, is that a kohen is not allowed to marry a halola. So what that means is that if the guy is a kohen, and the woman's father is a kohen, but the woman's father is married to a woman that he's not allowed to be married to. He's married to a grusha or a gioris or something like that. Then the woman is a halol, and even though her status as a yid is not brought into question, and even her status as a kohen is not really relevant because she's female, but the halacha is she's not allowed to marry a kohen. So these things become very particular. You have to do your research and collect the information. Very important, as I'm sure was mentioned, you have to ask the couple for the ksubas of their parents, and if possible, even their grandparents. B'derech klal, if you know what you're doing, through looking at a ksuba, you can tell almost immediately whether it was done by an Orthodox Rav and a Rav who knew what he was doing or not. It's usually pretty recognizable pretty quickly. Not to say that every Orthodox ksuba is perfect or even kosher, unfortunately, and not to say that every non-Orthodox ksuba is a disaster, but a discerning eye is able to tell almost immediately if this is legitimate or not. All right. So all of this information, the ksubas, the status, adoptions, conversions, divorces, the status of kohanim and of levim, all of this is collected either at the initial meeting with a couple, or again, as many shluchim do, they give them the forms. In fact, many shluchim give them the forms even before they meet with them the first time. So if they email you or call you and say, we want to meet with you to do the wedding, you say, no problem, I need you to fill out this form. Someone is asking if you can add forms to the course materials. I actually think that's a very good idea. I will try.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay,
that's good. I actually looked for a few minutes before. I don't have it, but it's not a big deal. Rabbi Josh Gordon here from the San Bernardino Valley, all of Shalom, put some together that a lot of people use. You can actually, to tell you the truth, you can actually make it yourself. It's not chokhmah shloim. I mean, I'm literally giving you the questions that you need to ask. But it's nice to have it organized and broken down. Okay. After that, the next thing you want to do at the initial meeting is get some issues out of the way. Again, particularly if these issues are usually not going to be issues if you're dealing with a frum couple, but if you're dealing with a not frum couple, you want to lay your cards on the table so that there's no surprises later. And you have to tell them that there are certain issues that are non-negotiables as far as you doing an Orthodox procedure are concerned. Here are some of the common ones. So number one is that they have to be allowed to marry each other, obviously. So in other words, the Birur Yadus and the Birur Yuchsin, all of that needs to work out, obviously. Once that B'Olam Mitzvah Hashem be cleared, they need to understand that as an Orthodox chuppah, as a frum chuppah, you, the Mesader Kiddushin, are in charge, right? So let them not come to you and say, we want, to read the Pledge of Allegiance. We want to make a prayer for the Israeli soldiers. We want to, we feel like it's a good time. I had a couple of weeks ago, a guy called me, Shliach actually called me. He said he has a Makurov of his. He's going to Israel for a wedding on Friday afternoon at 5:00. It's a completely secular wedding. And he was asked if he can make Kiddush under the chuppah, because it's Friday afternoon, 5:00. So can you make Kiddush? In other words, you can say this, maybe you'll make an additional course on how to say these things politically correctly. I just want to lay out the practicalities of this. They need to understand that you are going to run this chuppah. You're going to be in charge of procedure, and you're going to be in charge of ritual. If they have questions, they're welcome to ask you, but basically you run the ship. You can outline for them what's going to happen. I find that couples actually really like that. But they're going to start with all sorts of questions, right? Some of which we'll get into right now. And they need to understand that you call the shots. If they're not okay with that, it might be dead in the water in the sense that you might not be able to do the chuppah. If they start, that's a good time to say, look, Rabbi, we'd really like you to co-officiate with this rabbi or with that rabbi or with this cantor or with that cantor. Again, remember, if I'm doing the chuppah, I'm in charge. You want to bring a chazan? You tell me who it is, right? Oh, it's, Cantor Laura Silverstein. We got a problem. Or it's Cantor Moshe Zilberhaft, but he's the cantor from the local Reform Shul. Reform synagogue. He's going to sing God knows what. Once again, we got a problem. We'd like you to co-officiate with so-and-so or so-and-so. We don't really do any of that. So number one, they need to understand that you, the Rav, the Shliach, are in charge. And again, you're going to choose, the Eidim, things like that. Number two, they need to understand that the woman is going to go to the mikveh beforehand. Of course, for obvious tznius reasons, you're not going to get into the details of that with the woman, with the couple at the time. You'll tell her that this is one of the conditions of doing the wedding, that she needs to take some form of kala classes. She needs to meet with a woman at least once or twice before the wedding, who will explain to her how it works, who will set up the appointment. Many of them think that you just have to go and dip in the mikveh. That's not what happens. She needs to have sektara, she needs shiva nekiyim, she needs 12 days. If they're living together, the They need 12 days of abstinence. The woman has to accept to do all of this, and she's got to accept, to go and learn how to do all of this properly. They need to agree to have a kosher meal. If the meal at the reception is not kosher, Makublani miraboisai, that it is not permissible to be Mesader Kiddushin if the meal is not going to be kosher, because of reasons of Moras Ayin, where people will think that if it's a frum rav doing the chuppah, then the meal must be kosher. So they need to understand that the meal needs to be kosher. I don't know, it doesn't necessarily need to be, the best form of hashgacha, etc., but it does need to be a halachically kosher and acceptable meal. And again, you'd be surprised. Sometimes a couple will tell you, yeah, it's kosher. What does it mean it's kosher? That we see this caterer doing all sorts of Jewish events. Could be chazer treif. One time a couple told me, yeah, it's kosher. I said, who's catering? I said to them, who's catering? They told me a name of a particular caterer. I said, I don't think it's kosher. Call them up. In front of me, they called them up, and the place said, we're kosher, but we're not certified kosher. We don't need any of those rabbis telling us whether we are kosher or not, right? We decided for kosher. I looked at him and said, I'm so sorry. I cannot do the wedding. And they need to understand that as an Orthodox chuppah, there's not going to be a ring exchanging ceremony, which means the woman is not going to give the chosin a ring. The chosin is going to give the kala a ring, and he's going to say Sha'arei mekudeshesli, and all the rest of it. There is if the couple agree to all of this, then the shliach, of course, would have to talk to them about the particular date. You have to make sure it's not during Sfiras Omer. You have to make sure it's not during the 3 weeks. You have to make sure it's not during Chol HaMoed. You have to make sure it's not on Tisha B'Av, right? I got that question a couple of weeks ago. You have to make sure it's at a time where you can be Mesader Kiddushin. And if all of that is in order, they have a green light and they may proceed. The shliach and the couple may proceed with the arrangements for the wedding. There is a Persian minhag, which I don't know, I'm just going to mention it and sort of just leave it at that. There is a Persian minhag to do what's called a ksubah signing ceremony. Here in Los Angeles, it's a very big deal. They can a ksubah signing ceremony. The Persians will sometimes throw a party of hundreds of thousands of dollars, invite hundreds of people, party all night for the ksubah signing ceremony. It is very complicated halachically, incredibly complicated halachically. Years ago, I spoke to Rabbi Shofet, Chacham Shofet, the Persians call him. He's like the Rav of the Persian community, and he was very disappointed. He was very critical of this minhag, but he couldn't, even he told me, he cannot put a stop to it. If the couple want to have a ksubah sign, I'm just saying this, I'm leaving it at that. If the couple need or want to make a ksubah signing ceremony, you must be in touch with a Rav, Moira Hoira, who can give you guidance on how to deal with this specifically. All right? At the ksubah signing ceremony, they have this minhag where all the family members sign the ksubah. It's really a halachic nightmare. Anyways, if they ask you for this, just be aware that it's a minefield halachically. That's it. If that meeting goes well, if all goes well, then the couple go their way. The woman needs kala classes. The chosin absolutely needs chosin classes. You can give the guy chosin classes yourself. Again, if he's not from, you may not want to teach him all the different shittas and how to calculate veses afloga, at least not at this point, but they have to be taught and they have to be educated. I do want to say that with all the challenges of giving chuppah v'kiddushin to a couple, experience has shown us, and this is probably the reason why most of you are even taking this course in the first place and doing this, experience has shown us that it's a tremendous opportunity in developing a relationship with the couple. Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time before their wedding, they are eager to learn. They want to learn about Yiddishkeit. If you sit down and tell them, part of the Chosin courses comes with 10 shiurim on Hilchas Mezuzah and Hilchas Shabbos and Hilchas Kashrus. They're very often very happy to learn learn about setting up a Yiddish home. You're there for them. You're there for them at a very special time of their lives. Their hearts are open, and they're really ready and willing to absorb and learn. And you can have a tremendous opportunity. You can have a tremendous hashpah in these couples. All right. That's that as far as the initial meeting or meetings are concerned. And once all of that is set up, once the Bir Yadus is complete, the Bir Yuchsin is complete, the women's agreed to take Kala classes and go to mikveh, the Chosens agreed to take Chosen classes, they've agreed to allow you to do a proper chuppah v'kiddushin, kedas u'kedin. They've agreed to a kosher meal with a kosher caterer, etc. They've agreed to a kosher date, and everything pans out. We move on to the next stage. The next stage is the Rav's preparation for the chuppah v'kiddushin. So in order to, the most important part of preparing the chuppah v'kiddushin is preparing the documents, preparing the tnoim, and preparing the ksuba. In order to prepare the ksuba and the tnoim, once again, information is needed. At this stage, you will already have all this information from the initial meeting or the forms, that you have to collect it all. You have to collect it all and make it. So in order to do the tnoim, maybe there's a way to upload a tnoim, maybe not. Oh, somebody's asking, does the potential wife of a kohen need to be a basula? Does the potential wife of a kohen need to be a basula? A kohen is allowed to marry a woman that's not a basula. That's not the issue. Only a kohen gadol has to marry a basula. The issue is, if she's not a basula, the issue is from whom is she not a basula? If she is what's called, quote, niv'alo leposulah, which means if she had relations with an individual that she would halachically not be allowed to marry, then she is considered, as a rule, she's considered a chalola. And a chalola may not marry a kohen. So that means if she had relations with a goy, right? She had a non-Jewish boyfriend, and she had relations with him. She's a chalola, and she may not marry a kohen. If she had relations with a yid, with whom she's not allowed to marry, because that yid is related to her, right? Without getting into too many details. And he's a core of law in the sense that they're not allowed to get married. She's considered a chalola, and she's not allowed to marry a kohen. Really, if he's a kohen, it's you got to go through it with a fine comb. Okay, in order to prepare tnoim, you'll need the following pieces of information. You'll need the name of the chosen, of course, and the name of the kala. You'll need the name of the chosen's father and the kala's father, and you'll need the name of the chosen's father's father and the kala's father's father. The tnoim is inherently a financial agreement document between what's called the tzdodim, between the side of the chosen and the side of the kala. When I do chuppahs, I like to prepare all of the documents a couple of days in advance. So I do it, not in a rush. I prepare as much as I can beforehand. But the date, this is the way I do it, the date on the tnoim and the date on the ksuba is the date of the actual wedding itself. Right? So if it's Wednesday, Yud Aleph Elul, then I may be preparing it on Zion Elul, but I write the ksuba and the tnoim, I date them for Yud Aleph Elul. Of course, that's not a problem because we don't do the kinyonim and we don't have the edim sign it until the actual day of the wedding. But I just prepared in advance. And then you also need to know, of course, the date of the wedding, the place of the wedding, and the halachic city of the wedding. The halachic city is sometimes, halachically, which city the wedding is taking place in is sometimes difficult to know exactly which city it's in. So once again, one sometimes needs to do research beforehand. Sometimes the chassid kala will tell you, I'm getting married in Malibu, right? Give me the address. I learned from experience. What's the address of the wedding? Oh, it's in this and this hotel. You go online, you look at this and this particular hotel. Actually, legally, this hotel is in Los Angeles. Now, the wedding invitation says Malibu, right? They're telling all their friends they're getting married in Malibu, but actually legally it's not Malibu. Legally it's Los Angeles. Or they're telling you I'm getting married in, in Ventura, right? It turns out they're getting married in North Hollywood. I mean, you just have to know, Pashut b'Metzius. You have to look it up. So again, the Tnoim is going to require you to know the Chosn's name, the Kala's name, their father's name, their father's father's name, the date, and the city and place of the wedding. Of course, when you make the Tnoim and you have to start spelling these names and these places, some names are very complicated halachically to know how to spell, especially if they don't have Jewish names, they don't have Hebrew names, they're giving you, George and Michael and Jennifer and Jessica and God knows what. Not to mention the names of the cities are sometimes difficult to know how to spell. So you have to prepare all of this in advance, and it is absolutely imperative, it is absolutely crucial that you show the Tnoim and the Ksuba to a Rav Moira Hirav B'Poel a few days in advance so they can review it and they can make sure that there are no mistakes. To be completely honest with you, I do that to this very day, even though I have been Zoicha to do, many, many weddings. I almost always show the Tnoim and the Ksuba to someone else. Just an additional pair of eyes, somebody usually with more experience, etc., will look at it. And every now and then, there's always a little ha'or over here, a little ha'or over there. Sometimes no big deal, sometimes by mistake. You leave out the name you leave out a letter from somebody's name, and it could be mamash shayla on the kashrus of these documents. So yes, prepare the Tnoim and the Ksuba beforehand, and always, it's my humble advice, always show it to somebody else, to an objective pair of eyes first. There is room on the Tnoim for Orav Kabla Mitzala Chosen and Orav Kabla Mitzala Kala. That I usually don't fill that in a few days. I'll explain soon what that is. I usually don't fill that in until the actual day of the wedding. If you know beforehand who they're going to be, you can fill them out a couple of days beforehand also. That's also fine. Otherwise, you can fill that out b'shas Maisa, and that's it. For the Ksuba, less information is needed, even though halachically the Ksuba is, of course, much more important than the Tnoim. Less information is needed for the Ksuba. For the Ksuba, you only need the Chosn's name, his father's name, the Kala's name, her father's name. For the Ksuba, you need to know, of course, the Kala's status. Is she a B'sula, which means she's a virgin? Is she a divorcee? Is she an almona? Is she a widow? Is she a Be'ulta, which means she's a non-B'sula? Is she an Itza, which, covers many other categories? Is she a convert, in which case she's Giyurta, etc.? As I'm sure you learned all of this. There's also, you need to know for filling out the Ksuba, you need to know if they're Kohanim, Leviim, or Yisraelim. If they're Leviim, if anybody's a Levi, even though it doesn't really generally affect, a Levi can marry pretty much anybody Yisrael can marry. I cannot think right now, as I speak, of any restrictions in terms of who a Levi cannot marry. But for the Ksuba, absolutely, if one or the other is a Levi, then it should say so on the Ksuba. And you need to know the date and the place of where the wedding is taking place. And you will fill out the Ksuba as you've learned to do Ba'arichas Gedolah in this Chuppah of the Kiddushin course. The only thing that, of course, you won't fill out, both on the Tnoim and on the Ksuba, is the word V'konina, which means that the kinyonim have been made, and the signatures of the Eidim. The word konina will be written in only once the kinyonim have been made, and the signatures of the Eidim, of course, will only be written in once the kinyonim have been made in the presence of the Eidim, and then the Eidim will sign the Tnoim and the Ksuba. Otherwise, on a practical level, the day of the wedding, make sure you have a glass cup. I've learned the hard way that you have to sometimes bring your own glass cup to the weddings. Make sure you bring your own bottle of wine, and make sure it's mavushal, and make sure it's white. You never know. Sometimes you get there and, there's no wine, or there's, well, it's not going to be non-kosher wine because you're going to have a kosher caterer. But whatever, make sure you have your own bottle of kosher wine and that it's mevushal. Make sure it's white. Make sure you have a glass. And make sure, of course, you have the text, the Sheva Brachas, the Rebbe's letter, the Miyadir, the Birchas Koyanim. All of these things are all available on, Chabad.org, etc. You can find this stuff is not difficult to find. You need, of course, a printout of the special brachas that the Mesader Kiddushin himself makes under the chuppah, the Lashon Arayat Mekudeshes, all of the texts that are necessary for under the chuppah. You need to make sure all of that is printed out. Take with you 5 copies of the Ksubah and 5 copies of the Tanoim. Make sure in advance, again, if it's a non-religious wedding, make sure in advance that there's going to be at least one more Shomer Shabbos Yid present there that's not related to you, the Mesader Kiddushin, and that's not related to anybody in the family of the Chosn or in the family of the Kala. Otherwise, you may find yourself present there as the only Shomer Shabbos Yid that's not related to anybody, and you're not going to have kosher Eidim. And if you don't have kosher Eidim, you ain't doing no wedding. No Eidim, no wedding. And if there isn't going to be another Shomer Shabbos Yid there that's not related to you or anybody in the family of the Chosn or anybody in the family of the Kala, then you better make sure to bring another Shomer Shabbos Yid with you that's not related to anybody so that you can have 2 kosher Eidim. Make sure you find out about this in advance. What else needs to be prepared beforehand? What else needs to be beforehand? If it's Chodesh Elul, bring a shofar. People love when you blow shofar under the chuppah. They love that. Prepare a couple of good jokes to make under the chuppah. Prepare something to say. I'm a big believer in this. It sounds like, it sounds arbitrary, but it isn't. Prepare something meaningful to say under the chuppah. Remember, it's an opportunity to say something sometimes in front of hundreds of Yidden. And if you say it well, and if you say it from your heart, the Chosn and Kala will remember it forever. Remember that there are videos all over the place. If you speak well, you'll end up on the video reel for the wedding. And it's a tremendous opportunity to do Afatzas Hayadis and Afatzas Mayonis. This has nothing to do with the wedding, but if you are going, if it is a daytime wedding and there is a non from Olam there, by God, take with yourself a pair of tefillin. Come an hour or so early and just take the opportunity to put on tefillin with people. Again, my experience in the vast majority of cases, there's no resistance, almost no resistance, or mamish no resistance. Family of the Chosn, family of the Kala, make them all line up, tell them it's all part of, it's part of the process of getting married. I've had opportunity where I was zeicher to put on tefillin with, many, many Yidden through Chuppah v'Kiddushin. Okay. Once you've arrived at the chuppah, remember, of course, to bring and to wear a gartel when you stand on the chuppah and do Chuppah v'Kiddushin. And once you've arrived there, at this stage, you should have, again, remember, you should have a glass cup, wine, all the texts necessary to use under the chuppah. That's Miyadir, Birchas Koyanim, the Rebbe's letter, the brachas for Mesader Kiddushin, Sheva brachas, the Ksubah, the Tanoim, everything. You should have all of that with you. You'll set it down and you'll do the paperwork. So at this stage, we're talking about the Kabbalas Panim. I appreciate that I'm sort of painting a picture more at a non-frum wedding than a frum wedding. I'm assuming that's what's more necessary to learn. I'm going to continue sort of going with that picture in my head. You'll put down the paper, you'll put down your stuff, and you'll get busy with the paperwork. You start with the Tanoim first. That's the minhag. You do the Tanoim first, and here's what you need to do in order to do the Tanoim. Number one, you need what's called Orav Kablon Mitzad HaChosn. Orav Kablon Mitzad HaChosn means this. So again, the Tnoim is inherently an agreement, a financial agreement, a document of agreement between the Chosn side and the Kala side, basically between the father of the Chosn and the father of the Kala. The Tnoim also has for each side an Orav Kablan, which, again, let's just stick to the practicalities. It's a guarantor. It's a particular type of guarantor, but it's the Shnageyes. It's a guarantor. Orav Kablan mitzad HaChosn means a guarantor for the Chosn side, or Orav Kablan mitzad HaKala is a guarantor for the Kala side. I guess I forgot to say something really obvious, which is that when you prepare the Tnoim and the Ksuba, you can use a text. In other words, I do this all on my computer before, and I have like a template that I use. It covers, the language that's the same for every chassan is the same. There's some parts that are different, but you should have, if you're doing Chubah Kiddushin on a regular or semi-regular basis, you should have these templates, available for yourself that you can use. And then you go back to them. Now, sometimes the couple want their own fancy ksuba, right? They can have their own fancy ksuba, but you have to tell them, if you are going to get a fancy, elaborate ksuba, you have to show it to me first. And then you use your templates of the ksuba to make sure that this is kosher ksuba, right? And if the ksuba goes on and on about how the couple are going to love each other and never go to sleep angry, they're going to stay up and fight, or just stuff like that, then you'll know that it's not a kosher ksuba. And I still recommend, by the way, I learned this the hard way from experience, that even if the couple have a $300 beautiful ksuba, still bring a couple of your own copies of the ksuba, because all you need is for one of the Eidim to mess up while they're signing, and you got a big $300 gorgeous ksuba, which, as far as the ksuba is concerned, is worth less than a piece of toilet paper. There's nothing you can do with it. If the couple want to hang it up in their house, they can hang it up in their house, right? If they want to show the whole world how rich they are, they have a beautiful ksuba, gesundheit, but halachically it's not a ksuba. I can tell you what to do if that happens, but the point is, even if the couple have their own ksuba, I still recommend that you bring a couple of your own paper or hard copies, additional potential copies of the ksuba. Okay, back to the filling out of the Tnoim. So you get the Orav Kablan Mitzad HaChosn, you get the Orav Kablan Mitzad HaKala. The Arevim, the guarantors, are allowed to be related. In fact, they usually are. They're usually related to the Chosn's guarantor is usually related to him. Kala's guarantor is usually related to him. This is the father of the Kala. They do not have to be, the guarantors do not have to be Shomer Shabbos, but they do have to be Yidden, of course, and they do have to be Gdolim, which means they have to be over Bar Mitzvah, and they have to be male. You'll write, I recommend that you, the Mesader Kiddushin, you be the one to write down the names. The names of the Orav Kablans are written, their names ben their father's names. So if it's Moshe ben Yaakov, then you write Moshe ben Yaakov. If it's, Baruch ben Zalman, then you write Baruch ben Zalman. When I was taught, when I got Shimush, the way I was taught is that you're always makpid to write Sheyichya for those who are alive, and Zechronim Levracha or Aleim HaSholem for those who are not. So if the Orav Kablan is Moshe ben Baruch, and Baruch is not alive, then it's Moshe Sheyichya ben Baruch Zal. If they're both Baruch Hashem alive, then it's Moshe ben Baruch Sheyichya. And the same goes for the Orav Kablan Mitzad HaKala. Once their names have been written in, then the Eidim are identified. So who is going to be the two Eidim for the Tnoim? The Eidim have to be Jews, males, Shomer Shabbos, over Bar Mitzvah, not Kroivim, which means not related to each other. The Eidim cannot be related to each other. The Eidim cannot be related to anybody in the Chosn side or the Kala side. And the Eidim and the Tnoim cannot be related to the guarantors either. Right? Sometimes they'll tell you, I'm not related to him. I'm related to his wife, right? As you learned, very often that's no good, etc. Once the Eidim have been identified, 6 for the Tnoim, 6 kinyonim are made. 6 kinyonim are made for the Tnoim. With whom are these kinyonim made? Number 1, the father of the Chosn. Number 2, the father of the Kala. Number 3, the Orav Kablan for the Chosn. Number 4, the Orav Kablan for the Kala. Number 5, the Chosn himself. And number 6, the Kala herself. Now, how are these kinyonim actually made? So you usually take a gartel, right, or a handkerchief. If it's a gartel, you have to make sure it's not one of those shoelace gartels, right? It's got to be a good gartel, or a handkerchief, or a pen, or you can use your cell phone, or anything significant. First, the Eidim themselves should be kaina this object because it has to be the Eidims, and then the Eidim give it one at a time. You coordinate. You, the Mesader Kiddushin, that is, you coordinate these kinyonim. You call over the father of the chosin. Say, in the presence of these two witnesses, you'll raise this in your hand. If he's right-handed, he should raise it in his right hand. If he's left-handed, he should raise it in his left hand. And you say to the father of the chosin, as you raise this in your right hand, you obligate yourself in all of the obligations of the Tanoim, and he picks it up, right? I like to joke, photographers should take a picture so you can't deny it later, ha ha ha, and the kinyan is made. Call over the father of the Kala, same thing. Call over the Or of Kabbalah of the chosin, say, listen, the father of the chosin was just makabel upon himself. The obligations of the Tanoim, you're going to be his guarantor. As you raise this in your right hand, if you're right-handed, you obligate yourself to be the guarantor for all of the fathers of the chosin's obligations of the Tanoim. I don't know that you necessarily have to sit there and articulate every obligation of the Tanoim, and I don't even know that you can because it's intentionally vague, but you have to say to them, you have to show them, look, you have to show them on the table. This is the Tanoim. In the presence of these two witnesses, you're going to obligate yourself in all of the chiyuv. And then with the Or of Kabbalah of the Kala, and then with the chosin, and then with the Kala herself. Now, many weddings, especially the frum weddings, it's very impractical to make a kinyan with the Kala herself. First of all, the Kala herself could be far away. Second of all, you could have Onayin Hora, hundreds of guests. And just to walk through with the Eidim there and back will itself take 15 minutes. And if you do walk over to the Kala's not going to know what you're talking about. So in many cases, what I've seen and what I've learned, what you do is you have the father of the Kala be makabel kinyan on behalf of the Kala, which is also fine. The Kala is basically just being zoicha here in the Tanoim. You can have the father of the Kala do so on behalf of the Kala, but it is necessary to do a separate kinyan. So again, 6 kinyanim are made. Father of the chosin, father of the Kala, Or of Kabbalah for the chosin, Or of Kabbalah for the Kala, chosin himself, and either the Kala herself or her father or someone on behalf of the Kala. Once all those kinyonim have made in the presence of the Eidim, you then sit down and you write into the Tanoim the word the konina min atzdodim, min arovim kablonim, etc. Now, many times today, what they do is we organize in such a way we don't have to write in the whole word of a konina. What you do is you write there before and you write the word veronina, and then you just add a leg by the resh, and from veronina it becomes vekonina. Very simple, and then it's fine. Or if you want to fill in the whole word, you can fill in the whole word. Either way, it's fine. But the word vekonina should not be there before the kinyonim are made, and it should be filled in after the kinyonim are made. After the kinyonim are made and the word vekonina has been filled in, it's time for the Eidim who watched and presided over all of these kinyonim to sign their names at the bottom of the Tanoim. I highly, highly, highly recommend and highly, highly, highly encourage you to have an extra piece of paper there that the Eidim can sign their names on as a practice run first. And when you tell them to do so, especially, the Gor Fruma Eidim, they're like, you think I don't know how to write my name? And they don't. Somehow, Rabbi Shalom, in his infinite sense of humor, has made it such that adult, intelligent males, Rabbanim, Rosh Yeshivas, Gdolei Hadar, become completely incapable to write their names correctly and spell them correctly at the bottom of Tanoim and Ksubas. Anyways, but I digress. Have them practice it on a piece of paper. Make sure they've written it correctly. Make sure they've spelled it correctly. And again, if their fathers are in Gan Eden, then you write, then Rabbi Yankel Olav Shalom or Zechron Levracha, their name, then their father's name, and the word aid. There are various aid, by the way, is spelled Ayin Dalet, just so we're clear. There are different minhagim and masoros about whether the Eidim should write their family names. on the Tanoim and the Ksuba. It's interesting because I was taught not, and then about a year or so ago, I was in by the Bezdin in Crown Heights where we were filling out Tanoim and Ksubas, and I noticed that they did write the family names for the Edom. So I don't want to get into that right now, whether you do, whether you don't, either way, it's fine. But if you write the family names, so it would be, Yankel ben Baruch, Lemishpachas Rabinowitz, 8. Zalman ben Ruvain, Lemishpachas Silverberg, 8. When they write this, when the Edom write it as a practice run in a different piece of paper, it isn't the halacha that they have to write it as a practice run. It's just a really good idea. Again, you're the Rav Mesader Kiddushin. It's your responsibility. Make sure that the names are spelled right. Make sure that it's legible. If it's not legible, it's not kosher. Make sure that they don't write, that they write, if their fathers are in Gan Eden, that they write Olav Shalom by their father's names, not by their names. If they're a Kohen, they have to write a Kohen. If they're a Levi, they have to write a Levi, and 8. Once they've written it correctly, and by the way, if they get it wrong in the practice run, have them write it again until they get it right. Then you have Edom sign, Eid number 1 signs, and then Eid number 2 signs. If one Eid is a Kohen, he should sign first. If they're both Kohanim, then the one which is older signs first. If one's a Levi, he should sign first. If they're both Israelim, whichever one is older should sign first, but it's kosher either way. Once the Tanoim have been filled out and Edom have survived the experience of signing it, you'll then take the extra copies of the Tanoim that you brought and you'll dispose of them because you no longer need them and you don't want to create a scenario where you end up with extra copies. Extra copies of the Tanoim is not a big deal. It's definitely not a big deal. So anyways, the extra copies you dispose of. Finished. Once the Tanoim are complete, then you'll do the Ksuba. The Ksuba is the kinyonim is much simpler. The Ksuba is much faster. The Ksuba is only one kinyon. Only one kinyon. Only the Chassan makes a kinyon for the Ksuba. But again, you need 2 kosher Edom. In the presence of 2 kosher Edom, you make a kinyon with the Chassan. The procedure of the kinyon is the same. The Edom will take either a gartel, a thick gartel, or a handkerchief, or a phone, or a pen, or something significant. Make sure the Edom make a kinyon so it's theirs, and then they make a kinyon with the Chassan. And you'll tell the Chassan, as you raise this in your right hand, you obligate yourself in all the obligations of the Ksuba. Once the Chassan is koine, once the Chassan makes the kinyon, you'll fill in the words of the konina, either the whole word or change it from veronina to vakonina, and then the Edom sign at the bottom of the Ksuba in exactly the same procedure that we described before. Once that is complete, the Tanoim and the Ksuba are ready to go. It is our minhag, there is minhag Chabad, based on a sicha of the Rebbe, I believe in Tafshin Yud Daled, if I remember correctly, that even if the couple are getting married after Shkia, or even after Tzeis HaKachavim, the Tanoim and the Ksuba are still dated for the day when the Kinyanim are made. So if a couple are, during the winter, this is more common during the winter than during the summer, but if a couple have set their date, for the 28th day of Kislev, but in reality, they're going to end up getting married after Shkia or after Tzeis, which means it's halachically going to be the 29th day of Kislev. The way we do it, this is our minhag, is that if the kinyonim are made on the 28th of Kislev, the documents say the 28th of Kislev, and even if the wedding is technically halachically the next day, it doesn't matter, right? The Rebbe said you can be meshabed yourself before. It doesn't matter. We're not makbid. In other communities, just so you know, in other communities, they're very makbid on this and sort of drive everyone crazy. But we hold that the kinyonim and the ksuba and tanoim can be dated for halachically the day before the actual kiddushin, which takes place under the chuppah after shkia or even after Tzeis HaKachavim. In fact, we always celebrate the Rebbe's anniversary in Yudalet Kislev. The Metzias Advarim is that the Rebbe got married on Tesvav Kislev, because it was, in Warsaw, Poland, in the middle of the winter. and the chuppah was late at night. But the ksuba was dated, to the best of my knowledge, for Yudalad Kislev. Okay. Next. As far as the Kabbalah's Ponim itself is concerned, so again, this depends very much on the nature of the, on the nature of the olam, on the nature of the crowd. If you have, obviously, if you're doing a Lubavitcher wedding, then there's going to be a mimer, and then they're going to be for the mimer, etc. If it's not, or if it's not even a from olam, then you're obviously going to have a very different type of Kabbalah's Panim. Our minhag, the way we do it, is that somebody reads the Tnoim at the Kabbalah's Panim. The Tnoim is, when the Tnoim are read, the two mothers, that is the mother of the Chosin and the mother of the Kala, are present. Sometimes other friends and relatives are there too, but definitely the mothers are there. And at the conclusion of the reading of the Tnoim, the two mothers break a plate. That's our minhag. That's the way it's done. Once the plate is broken, they usually sing the Maimer Nigun, and the Chosin says L'chadoidi, and that's it really as far as the Kabbalah's Ponim is concerned. Once the Kabbalah's Ponim is over, they go to do the Badekim. Now when they do the Badekim, the father of the Chosin and the father of the Kala walks next to the Chosin. The father of the Chosin should go on the Chosin's right. The father of the Kala should go on the Kala's left. And they walk over to the Kala and they put a veil over her face. The Chosin, that is, puts the veil over her face. After which the father of the Chosin, the father of the Kala gives her a bracha. Then the father of the Chosin gives her a bracha. Sometimes other people want to give a bracha. Yivarechecha Hashem b'shmerecha. And then the father of the Chosin and the father of the Kala take the Chosin again by his arms. Chosin's father on his right, Kala's father on his left. They walk him out and they go to dress him, to get him ready for the chuppah, and all the guests go out to the chuppah itself. As far as the Chosin himself getting ready for the chuppah, here's what you have to know. Number one, our minhag is that there's no knots on the Chosin. So his shoelaces are untied. His tie should really either be untied or, at least loosened. The gartel which is around him, also that should not be tight. He should have nothing in any of his pockets, no wallets, no watches, no cell phones, nothing. The Chosin should really not be wearing any jewelry at this point. Again, no cufflinks, no tie pins, no watches, anything like that. He wears a kapota, a kittel, and the minhag is to put an overcoat on top. Of course, again, with in Lubavitch, we try as much as possible to have from the Rebbe different begodim, a shirt for a kittel, or if possible, a kapota or a piece of a kapota, or something like that, as much as possible, because of the kedusha of the experience. Once the Chosin is ready to go and the wedding coordinator says it's time to go, they usually give the father of the Chosin, the minhag is that the father of the Chosin takes a candle, the father of the Kala takes a candle, and they walk the Chosin down to the chuppah. Once the Chosin is there, the Chosin faces pretty much the direction where the Kala is going to be coming down from. Once the Chosin is there, the mothers of the Kala bring the Kala. The Kala, of course, her face is covered. The Kala's mother on her right, the Chosin's mother on the Kala's left. And they bring the Kala all the way up to the chuppah. The minhag is, if I remember correctly, the fathers take, I think, 1 or 2 steps. I'm drawing a bit of a blank, but the fathers, I think, take 1 or 2 steps toward the Kala as she's coming closer. They bring the Kala under the chuppah, and then the Kala walks around 7 times. Our minhag, this is the way we do it. The Kala walks around 7 times, as do the Chosin's parents, the Kala's parents, and all of the living biological ancestors all walk around. If the grandparents are Baruch Hashem alive, they should walk around. If the great-grandparents are alive, they should walk around. Sometimes Baruch Hashem, you have a large number of people and quite a traffic jam. One of the jobs of the Mesader Kiddushin is to keep that circle moving. Otherwise, the band is going to play the Alter Rebbe's for a long time, and yet you just got to, it can get crowded. The Kala walks around 7 times. I was taught that the Kala goes anti-clockwise. So basically, as the Kala comes up the stairs to the chuppah, the Kala goes to her right, and then she walks around 7 times. I highly recommend that you count the hakafas. After the 7th time, it actually ends up being 7.5 times, because after 7 times, the Kala has to end up on the chosn's right. So wherever the chosn is standing, the Kala has to stand to her right. Once the 7 hakafas are finished, the chosn and Kala are positioned under the chuppah, and we're ready to do the chuppah Kiddushin. The right way to do this is for the chosn and Kala to be facing Mizrach. So if you have a phone or a compass, you make sure you know which way Mizrach is, and the chosn and Kala face Mizrach. The minhag is that the parents stay under the chuppah for the entire chuppah. The parents of chosn and Kala stay there. I'm actually not sure if there is an official minhag one way or the other about the grandparents. I've seen grandparents stay. I've seen grandparents leave. I don't know if there's a formal minhag one way or the other. I don't know. But the parents definitely stay under the chuppah the whole time. The wedding planner will take the candles away from parents and grandparents, and chosn and Kala face Mizrach, and you move on with the program. So the first thing that happens, again, this is a minhag. The first thing that happens is that they sing Baruch Habon Mi'adir, right? Baruch Habon. They sing the Adir. Then we have somebody read the Rebbe's letter. Absolutely tell the Olam that Divrei Tzadikim Kayomim La'ad, and in honor of the Rebbe's brachas, we ask everybody to rise. Read the Rebbe's letter. It should be translated into English, in my humble opinion, so that people know what the bracha means. Once the Rebbe's letter is read, you can tell everybody to have a seat. And then the minhag is to do brachas kohanim. So you have kohanim come up, and the kohanim give the bracha. The kohen who does brachas kohanim doesn't have to be frum, doesn't have to be Shem Shabbos, but he has to be a kohen. The person who sings Mi'adir, I don't know that he needs to necessarily be a Shem Shabbos Yid, but he should know the words and he should know what to sing. That part is relatively easy. Okay. Then comes the Siddur Kiddushin. Again, I'm going to focus now just really like hammer and nails on the practicalities of it. Here's what you do for the Siddur Kiddushin. Number 1, you call up the Eidim. As I mentioned before, if necessary, the Rav HaMesader Kiddushin is permitted halachically to be one of the Eidim. That's fine. So if he is, then it's him and one other person. If it's not, then it's 2 other people. Number 1, you call up the Eidim and you announce that these 2 are the Eidim, to the exclusion of everybody else. They need to be Shomer Shabbos. They need to be, they need to be Jewish. They need to be male. They need to have been born male. They need to be Gedolim, which means they need to be over 13. They need to be Shomer Shabbos and not related to each other or anybody in the family of the Chosn or anybody in the family of the Kala. It could be, these 2 Eidim could be the same as the Eidim on the Tanoim, could be the same as the Eidim on the Ksuba, could be not. Doesn't matter, right? You can have 3 sets of Eidim or 1 set of Eidim. You can use the same Eidim that sign on the Tanoim, can also sign on the Ksuba, can also be the Eidim under the Chuppah, or you can have 3 different sets of Eidim. Our minhag, later you're going to need something called Eida Yichud. Our minhag is to use the same Eida Kiddushin as Eida Yichud, ideally. But even that's not an akiv, b'di'evad, you lost the Eidim, you can find 2 other Eidim for Yichud. So in the end, you end up with 4 sets of Eidim. Again, Tanoim, Ksuba, Kiddushin itself under the chuppah, and Eida Yichud. Could be the same 2 people, could serve all 4 functions. We can have 2 groups, as many or as few as you want. You can mix and match. You can have 1 person from the Tanoim. It could also be in the Ksuba. It could also be Eida Yichud. Doesn't matter. Doesn't. Again, as long as in all cases where you have Eidim, all these conditions are met, that they're Yidden, and that they're Frumish and Meshabes Yidden, and that they're Gedolim, and that they're not related to anybody. All right, so the actual Kiddushin under the chuppah. This is sort of the D-Day moment. So number one, you call up the Eidim. Make sure the Eidim are standing under the chuppah. Number two, you get the ring. Right? Somebody produces the ring. Anybody got a ring? If you want, afterwards, I'll tell you what to do if you can't find the ring. But you get the ring. Once you have the ring, you show the ring to the chassan, and you make sure that the chassan owns the ring, because if the chassan doesn't own the ring, he can't be mekadesh a woman with a ring that doesn't belong to him. So you say to the chassan, "Is this your ring?" And if he says no, you say to him, "Well, why don't you make a kinyan on the ring?" Right? So, anyways, but you make sure the ring belongs to the chassan. Again, I was taught that you should even clarify with the chassan that he bought it with his own money, which is the right way to do it. And the chassan declares that the ring is his. The minhag then is to give the ring to the Eidim to examine it, to make sure it's worth a shava pruta, which is approximately a nickel. Now that we're hit an inflation wave, maybe closer to a dime, but be it as it may, not a significant amount of money. The Eidim examine the ring to make sure it's shava pruta. You give it to the chassan. You tell him to hold it, and he does not, and don't do anything with it yet. All right. Then you take a glass cup. This is our minhag. You take a glass cup. This is the same our minhag, the same glass cup that you're going to use for the birchas erusin, for the sheva brachas, and which the chassan is going to break. That's the way we do it. Same cup. You take a glass cup. You make sure it was tovel beforehand, and you fill it up with white wine. And before God and man, in the presence of two witnesses, as the chassan holds the ring in front of the kala, you make two brachas. Boire Priya Gofen, Savri Maronan. And the recordings you hear the Rebbe say Savri Maronan. Savri Maronan, Boire Priya Gofen, Asher Kitchan, and the second bracha is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Asher Kitchan b'mitzvaysav v'tzivonu al ha'aroyos, v'yasser lanu v'sarusais, v'hiti lanu v'sanestuis lanu l'chuppah b'kiddushin, Baruch Atah Hashem, l'kadesh amo yisrael l'chuppah b'kiddushin. The chassan and kala will say Amen. You will warn them beforehand not to say Baruch Hu Baruch Shmai if they're from people and they know this, because they have to be yotze the brachas. And they'll say Amen. Once the brachas have been made, now, by the way, the Mesader Kiddushin is making these brachas as a shliach of chassan and kala. Once the brachas have been made, the chassan and kala need to drink a drop of the wine. The minhag is the father of the chassan gives the chassan a little bit to drink, the mother of the kala gives the kala a little bit to drink, and then the chassan does the actual kiddushin. What you do is you tell the chassan if he's right-handed to hold the ring in his right hand, if he's left-handed to hold the ring in his left hand. The kala should extend her right index finger, regardless of whether she's right-handed or left-handed. Either way, she should extend her right index finger, and the chassan should say the words Harei Mekudeshes Li B'Tabas Zoy Kedas Moshe Yisrael, and he should say the words as he's putting the ring on her finger. As he's putting it on, he should say these words. If he needs help with the words, the Mesader Kiddushin can help him with the words. But he should say it as he's putting it on. The Eidim should watch. And once it's on, once the ring is on, and he said the appropriate words, the Eidim should say the word Mekudeshes. Now, in the event that the chassan doesn't understand what he's saying, the Mesader Kiddushin has to explain to him what you're saying. You're saying, you're about to say, with this ring, with this ring, I marry you. With this ring, I betroth you. With this ring, I make you my wife. In accordance with the law of Moshe and Yisrael. He doesn't have to say it in English, but he has to understand what he's saying. He puts the ring on her finger. The minhag is that the kala says nothing, and the Eidim say Mekudeshes. Once that is done, then in order to interrupt between Erusin and Nisuin, what you do is you read or you have somebody read the ksubah. Poshet, read the ksubah from beginning to end, right? B'echad b'Shabbos, etc., etc. Once the ksubah is read, the chassan has to give the ksubah to the kala. There are different minhagim among Fruma Yidden as to whether the Eidim who were there for the Kiddushin have to stand there and witness the chassan giving it to the kala. The Frum Olam is very careful with this. In Lubavitch, I don't know that there is a formal minhag one way or the other. To the best of my knowledge, we're not makpid that the Eidim have to stand there and watch the husband give the ksuba to his wife. But definitely he has to give it. The chassan has to give the ksuba to the kala. The husband has to give the ksuba to his wife. She doesn't have to hold it for the rest of the chuppah. She can give it to her mother, or whatever it is. They can even give it back to the Mesader Kiddushin to watch. But he definitely has to give her the ksuba. The only exception to this rule is if the chuppah is chuppas nida, which means that the kala is a nida at the time of the chuppah. Then in that case, the chassan will not give the ksuba to the kala. Instead, the Rav HaMesader Kiddushin, after the ksuba is read, will give the ksuba directly to the kala. I guess I also should have said before, when he puts the ring on her finger, that if it's a chuppas nida, he has to try to be careful when he puts the ring on her finger, he has to try to be careful not to touch her, because she's a nida. But with regard to the ring, we paskin that even if it's chuppas nida, he does put the ring on her finger. With regard to the ksuba, we paskin that the mesiras haksuba, if she's nida, is done by the Rav HaMesader Kiddushin, not by the chassan. Once the ksuba has been given liyad, from the hand of the chassan to the hand of the kala, or ended up in the hand of the kala, the only thing that's left really is sheva brachas. Sheva brachas, boyer priya gofen, shakol bar l'chvoida, yoytzer ha'odam, etc., etc. So here the people usually call up 7 people to make the brachas. Fine, gesundheit. I like to tell the chassan kala beforehand, look, you can have relatives, they don't have to be Shomer Shabbos, etc., but they really should be people who can read Hebrew, at least to one degree or another. Very often they get up there and with Sibrecht Seiner, they can't, kol mitzhalos chassanim mechaposim and orim mishtei neginosum, breaking their teeth. It isn't fair to the people who are getting the brachas if they can't read Hebrew. It isn't fair to them to have to sit through it. And really, if you plots the bracha, it becomes the shaila if you're even yotza. Sometimes you have to help them, Asher baros sosim simcha, etc. Just keep track. Make sure they make the 7 brachas. Make sure they make them in order, etc. Once the first 2 brachas, sometimes it's to say them together, sometimes say it separately. It doesn't matter. You could do either way. Again, to the best of my knowledge, there's no formal minhag. The first 2 brachas are ber priya gofen shakol bar l'chvoida. Sometimes they give the same person both brachas. Sometimes they divide them. To the best of my knowledge, there's no formal minhag in Lubavitch about that. I may be wrong, but I don't think so. Once the sheva brachas are finished, again, the chassan and kala need to drink from the wine for the second time. The first time, because again, there's 2 brachas, 2 sets of brachas which are made, both one by the Mesader Kiddushin, the other one is sheva brachas. In both cases, Bor Priya Gofen is made, and in both cases, Bor Priya Gofen is made on behalf of the chassan and kala. So after the sheva brachas are made, chassan and kala have to drink. In this case, the minhag is the first time it was the father of the chassan that gave the chassan to drink. The second time it's the father of the kala that gives the chassan to drink. The first time it's the mother of the kala that gives the kala to drink. The second time it's the mother of the chassan that gives the kala to drink. Once the chassan and kala have had a little drink, chassan and kala really need just a little bit. Then you have somebody drink the rest of the wine in the cup. Nowadays it became a ganze kibud, right? I am in Hogim Lubavitch. A ganze kibud, you call somebody up and you give him a ganze introduction that he's mechubed, drinking the rest of the wine in the cup. Anyways, you finish the wine, you wrap it up, you make sure it's wrapped up well, and you put it right in front of the chassan's foot. If he's right-footed, he should break it with his right foot. If he's left-footed, he should break it with his left foot. You tell him to smash it with his heel. You show him which is the hard side and which is the soft side, and he smashes down on the glass, and everybody shouts Mazel Tov, and the chuppah is over. It is not minhag Chabad to sing or to say Meshkachech Yerushalayim Tishkach Yemini or anything like that. It's a beautiful minhag, but it's not ours. That's it. The chassan breaks the glass, and if the chassan kala want to sing Meshkachech, if they want to sing Meshkachech, fine. Once the glass is broken, the chuppah is over. And then you need yichud. Chassan and kala need to go into yichud. This part is just a little bit difficult to manage technically, because at this stage, everybody rushes chuppah, everybody's shouting and screaming with the kushtzach and von alle Seiten. You got to give it a couple of minutes, wait for the dust to settle, and then make sure the chassan and kala are escorted to the cheder yichud. Once they get to the cheder yichud, the minhag is that a silver spoon is put down on the floor right in front of the cheder yichud. The eidim, again, ideally it should be the eidim who were the same eidim as the Kiddushin, who watched the chassan put the ring on the kala's finger. The eidim should make sure that there's nobody else in the cheder yichud and that there are no other doors or ways to get in and out. If there are, they should be locked up. Once the eidim have made this examination, chassan and kala should walk into the yichud room, chassan first, kala second, over the silver spoon, and they go into the yichud room. Once they're in the yichud room, the minhag is that the parents of chassan, parents of kala come, they give the chassan kala a bracha, and they also pour them a drink, and everybody wishes everybody mazel tov. Usually at that point, if the chassan's wearing like the Rebbe's kittel or the Rebbe's kapata, they'll take it away from him so it doesn't get lost or anything like that. And then you kick everybody out of the yichud room, make sure the door is closed and locked, and you tell the couple before you walk out that there's going to be yichud for, I was makabel 7 minutes, some people say 6 minutes, 8 minutes, I was makabel 7 minutes. 7 minutes, after 7 minutes, the eidim will give a knock on the door. That means that the yichud is over, and the eidim leave. At that point, you need to make sure that the ksubah isn't lost and that the couple know where the ksubah is, right? Either the wedding planner or something like that knows where it is. And then that's it. I mean, in the yichud room, the chassan and kala, if they're fasting, will eat, a drink, etc. Pretty much that, as the Mesader Kiddushin, that's basically where your job goes on a pretty extended pause. After that is the wedding. I mean, is the reception. Zink, Matanz, Gesundheit. The only other thing you have to make sure of is that the Sheva brachas after benching. So how do you do that? You make sure there is a minyan. Make sure there are at least 7 men who have washed and eaten the kazayas of bread. You fill up 2 glasses of wine before benching, one for the benching itself, the other one for the Sheva brachas, and you have somebody lead the benching. The lashon is Navorech Elokeinu she'asimcha b'ma'oinai she'achalnu mishaloi, Baruch Elokeinu she'asimcha b'ma'oinai she'achalnu mishaloi, u'v'tu v'chayim. And whoever's leading the benching goes through the whole thing until Baruch HaGever Shitach L'Shem Hashem Miftachay, finish the benching, and then you use the other kais. So that the person who benches on a kais, you take the other kais and you use it for Sheva brachas. So again, you call up, this time it's 6 people because the 7th bracha is Hagofim. She's going to be made by the person who actually benched. But the person who benched is going to make Hagofim after the other 6. That's the way we do it. So you call up 6 people, Shakal Baruch Voida, Yetzer Adam, etc. The 6 brachas are made. The person who benched will make Bar Pri Hagofim on the other kais. In other words, the kais that he benched on. He'll drink a little bit from the kais. You take the 2 kaises, you may have seen this before, and you pour them back and forth. So the way you do that is, what happened, the idea behind it is that the kais that the person who benched on drank from is a kais pogum. So you take the other kais, the one that the Sheva brachas were made on, that nobody drank from, which is not a kais pogum, and you pour a little bit from that kais into the kais that you benched on. Now both kaises are not pogum. Then you pour from the kais of benching into the Sheva brachas kais. Now that they're both not pogum, you pour from the benching kais into the Sheva brachas kais, from the Sheva brachas into benching into Sheva brachas back into benching, and benching back into Sheva brachas. So you mix them both together after they're not pogum both ways. One kais goes to the chassan, one kais goes to the kala. They should both once again drink at least a little bit, at least a drop. The right way, by the way, to do it is that the Chos and Kala don't make their own Hagofim when they get the Kais. They should be Yotza, to the best of my knowledge, the Yotza Borpri Hagofim from the Hagofim which is made. And everybody should live happily ever after. That's how you do it.
Okay.
At this point, I think I'm going to have about 12 minutes for questions. Just take a quick look at the...
Yeah, and if anybody else has questions, you can unmute yourself also and ask. But
Isaac wants in front of the top. Can you add forms to the... Okay. The potential... Okay. Is a time absolutely needed for Kiddushin? Good question. No. A time is not absolutely needed for the Kiddushin. If for whatever reason there are complications with that, it can be skipped. Somebody wrote privately, I'm not going to read that in public. Ask me privately. Can a ger be a witness? Can a ger be a witness? I can't imagine not. What's the problem with the ger being a witness? To the best of my knowledge, there's no problem with the ger being a witness. Again, as long as he's a ger tzedek, a real, in other words, halachically kosher conversion. He's a fruma yid, with a ger, it's less chance of them being related, right? Maybe they're related through their wife somehow if they're married, but the ger there's less issues of kurva. But yes, to the best of my knowledge, a frum ger tzedek could be an aid, no problem. Thank you for all this. Are there any common issues that might come up during the chuppah that we would be aware of? The question is, any common issues will come up during the chuppah? It's a good question. Anything come up during the chuppah? I mean, if the chassan and kala change their mind, that could be a significant issue. I'm kidding. During the chuppah itself, not that I can think of. You know what? I did think of something. You know what can sometimes go wrong during a chuppah? Yeah. A bit of a sensitive issue, but I've noticed that for whatever reason, when other rabbonim are present at chuppahs, in other words, not the Mesader Kiddushin, they sometimes shout comments, like, hey, don't forget to do this, or hey, do that, or, so if you're doing a chuppah of a Kiddush in the presence of a Frum Ha'olam, and there are other Rabbonim there, be prepared for them to come over to you in the middle and make all sorts of ha'oros. Know your stuff, because sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. You got to know your stuff, but that's the only thing I can think of that comes up during the actual chuppah. What happens if the chas and kala out of habit make a baruch hu baruch shmoi? Great question. This question is not only relevant here. This question is relevant to all brachas, where you have to be yotza, like Tekiyah Shofar that we're coming up to b'chulu. And most paskim, to the best of my memory, write that b'diavad, if they say baruch hu baruch shmoi, if you say baruch hu baruch shmoi, you're still yotza. What happens if the ring cannot be found? Oh, I told you can ask me this. I actually never had this, but I once came this close. So if the ring cannot be found, you have a poshet eitzah. What you do is you find somebody else who has a kosher wedding band. So a kosher wedding band, definitely according to our minhag, is a ring that is gold, but has no ornaments or designs or even any writing on it at all. So no diamonds, no nothing, just a plain wedding ring. Usually a ring that, maybe that another couple used for their chuppah v'kiddushin. What you do is you say to the woman, let's say a woman, right, the mother of the kala, let's say, standing right there. You say to the mother of the kala, we need your ring. Now, in order to use her ring, you actually needs to be a kinyan made on it. So she has to understand that from a halachic perspective, she's actually going to sell her ring. Now, afterwards, the kala, if she wants, when the tabas kiddushin is found, the kala, if she wants, can give as a gift the ring back to her mother. But it's not a matana malas lahachzir. It's you pull out a $5 bill from your pocket, you give it to the chassan as a gift. Say to the chassan, You're right-handed, take this $5 gift, make a kinyan with the $5, he's kinda. Say to the chassan, you're going to buy this ring from your future shviga or from your mother with this $5 bill. And under the chuppah, right there, the chassan buys the ring for $5. Now the ring is not worth $5; it's worth much more. But for the sake of this, it's a kinyan kesef, it's a kinyan agboa. It's not a kinyan kesef; it's a kinyan. You can be kind of it. You make the chassan actually be kind of the ring, and that is the chassan's ring. And he can do the kiddushin with someone else's ring, which halachically then becomes his ring when he's kind of it under the chuppah. It's halachically that's the way to deal with it. Practically, just make sure you have the ring beforehand. All right, there are thousands of what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? Each of the what ifs, needs to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Make sure, of course, that you're always in touch with a Rav Moira Hoiro who can guide you for all the shilas that come up. And that's it. May you all be blessed.
All right, Yasher Koyach. Thank you very much, Rabbi Kesselman, and thank you everybody for joining. I feel like that was perfect. Finished early. It's also a good thing to do for the chuppah. Don't talk for too long. Yasher Koyach, thank you very much once again, and Yasher Koyach everybody for joining. And Tzlach Rabba.
Shkoyach.